A young billionaire sees two little girls crying in a raging downpour with a baby, and their revelation brings him to tears. The sky over New York City turned dark with an unnatural speed that March afternoon. Jack Thompson watched through the panoramic window of his office on the 40th floor as thick black clouds gathered on the horizon, swallowing the last rays of the setting sun. His reflection in the reinforced glass stared back at him. A 35-year-old man, dark brown hair meticulously cut, a defined jaw, and eyes burdened by memories he preferred to forget. "Mr. Thompson," his assistant's voice sounded over the intercom. "The helicopter won't be able to take off due to the weather conditions. Should I reschedule your visit to the factory for tomorrow?" Jack pressed the intercom button harder than necessary. "No, Helen, I'll drive. But sir, the meteorology department just issued a red alert. This could be the worst storm in 50 years. And the highway." "I said I'll drive," he interrupted, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Just cancel the dinner with the investors." A resigned sigh preceded his assistant's, "Yes, sir." Jack grabbed his Armani coat from the rack and checked the Rolex on his wrist, 5:45 p.m. If he left now, he'd arrive at the new factory before 8, even in the storm. He hadn't built an empire by letting the weather dictate his schedule. The private elevator took him straight to the underground garage, where his black Porsche Cayenne awaited. The sound of his Italian shoes echoed against the concrete as he walked toward the vehicle, keys jingling in his hand. Only when he settled into the leather interior did he allow his ruthless executive mask to slip. "Just a bit. You're being stubborn and stupid," he muttered to himself, starting the car. The smooth purr of the German engine couldn't drown out the voice in his head. A voice that sounded uncannily like his mother's. The first raindrops began to fall as he emerged onto the street. Big and heavy, they splattered against the windshield like tiny water bombs. Within minutes, the city's usual drizzle had turned into a deluge. Jack turned on the radio, more for some noise besides the furious drumming of the rain than out of real interest. The weatherman's voice sounded tense. "We urge all drivers to seek shelter immediately. This unprecedented low-pressure system is causing wind gusts of up to 75 miles per hour. We already have reports of fallen trees on major..." A bolt of lightning split the sky, followed instantly by a thunderclap that made the car windows vibrate. Jack set the windshield wipers to their highest speed, but even so his visibility decreased by the second. The city lights receded behind him as he continued along the highway toward upstate New York. As the darkness thickened, memories he kept carefully locked away began to seep through the corners of his mind. Another storm, almost 3 decades ago. He was 7, soaked to the bone, standing at the door of a public hospital. "No," he said out loud, turning up the radio's volume. He wasn't going to think about that, not today. The digital panel read 7:45 p.m. and the outside temperature was dropping rapidly. The rain now fell in such dense curtains that the headlights of the few cars still on the road became ghostly blurs through the glass. That was when something caught his attention on the shoulder. For a moment, he thought he'd seen... No, it couldn't be. He slowed down, his brown eyes scanning the darkness through the curtain of rain. The wind howled outside, violently whipping the trees that lined the road. Another flash of lightning lit the night like a giant camera flash, and his heart stopped. 3 small figures were huddled under a partially fallen tree. 2 girls, one who couldn't be older than 5 and the other even younger, were clinging to each other, protecting something between them. Even through the torrential rain, Jack could see they were drenched, their clothes plastered to their little, trembling bodies. Time seemed to freeze, and suddenly he wasn't there anymore. "Jack, you can't stay here. The orphanage is the best place for you right now." The voice of Sandra, his social worker, echoed through the decades. The smell of disinfectant in the hospital, the sound of rain against the window of the room where his mother... A shrill cry cut through the noise of the storm, snapping him violently back to the present. A baby. There was a baby with those girls. His hands moved of their own accord, guiding the car onto the shoulder. Mud splashed under the tires as he braked, and for a moment, the children looked frightened, as though they might run. The older girl pulled the younger one behind the tree, but Jack could see their legs were shaking too much to go anywhere. "No, don't move," he murmured, though they couldn't hear him. Jack turned off the engine but left the headlights on. His heart pounded so hard it hurt as he reached for the umbrella on the passenger seat. The rain hit him like a wall when he opened the door, and the wind nearly tore the umbrella from his hands. "Hey!" he called, trying to make his voice as gentle as possible as he approached. The wind carried his words away, forcing him to shout, "It's all right, I won't hurt you." The older girl, dark hair dripping water, wide, frightened eyes, clutched her sister closer. Between them, partially protected by their bodies, a baby of no more than 6 months was whimpering, his face red from crying and a fever. Even from a distance, Jack could see something was wrong with the child. "My name is Jack," he continued, stopping a few steps away and crouching to their eye level. His $3,000 Italian suit was completely ruined by the rain, but he barely noticed. "You can't stay here, it's too dangerous." The older girl studied him with an intensity that made him swallow hard. There was something in her gaze, a mix of fear and determination, innocence and a harsh wisdom far too great for someone her age, that hit him like a punch to the gut. We can't go with strangers," she replied, her voice trembling as much as her body, but still trying to sound firm. Another thunderclap exploded overhead, so close that Jack felt the hairs on his neck stand on end. The baby began to cry louder, a desperate sound that seemed to pierce his chest. The younger girl sobbed, burying her face in her sister's shoulder. "Emma, I'm scared," she whispered, but the wind carried her words to Jack. "I know you shouldn't go with strangers," Jack said softly, trying to ignore how his own body was shaking. "And not just from the cold. But this storm is too dangerous. Look at that tree. It could fall at any moment. My car is warm, and I can take you somewhere safe." As if to emphasize his words, a sharp crack sounded above them. One of the tree's thicker branches had begun to give under the weight of the water and the force of the wind. The older girl, Emma, looked up, then at her sister and the baby, and finally at Jack again. Her dark eyes seemed to pierce his soul, as if they could read every secret and every scar he carried. "Noah's sick," the younger girl suddenly said, her voice almost lost beneath the roar of the rain. The baby coughed, a wet, worrying sound that made Jack's blood run cold. He noticed how, even though the children's clothes were soaked, they looked well cared for. They weren't street kids. Something had happened, something that had brought them here. "Emma," he said, choosing his words carefully, "I promise I won't hurt you. I'm a good person and I just want to help. That baby needs a doctor, and you two need to warm up. Please, let me help." A particularly bright flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed instantly by a deafening clap of thunder. The tree above them cracked dangerously, small branches starting to rain down around them. That seemed to settle Emma's decision. "Okay," she said, her small voice trying to sound brave. "But if you try anything bad—" "I won't," Jack promised, moving forward slowly with the umbrella. "You're very brave, you know that. Now come on, quickly." He guided the girls to the car, opening the back door. The warm interior felt like another world compared to the chaos outside. Emma got in first, still holding the baby Noah with a competence that broke Jack's heart. What kind of life had forced a 5-year-old to develop such skills? "What's your name?" Jack gently asked the younger one as he helped her climb in. "Olivia," she answered timidly, her teeth chattering from the cold. Her soaked clothes were starting to form a puddle on the leather seat, but Jack didn't care. He closed the door and hurried to the driver's side, throwing himself into the seat. Water dripped from his drenched suit, but his eyes were fixed on the rearview mirror, watching the children. Emma had positioned baby Noah in her lap with a familiarity that suggested long practice, her eyes never leaving Jack's, watchful of his every movement. "There are blankets in the trunk," he said, going back out into the rain to fetch them. When he returned with 3 soft blankets, his heart clenched at the sight of how the girls huddled in the seat, like wounded animals expecting the next blow. Emma especially seemed to carry the weight of the world on her tiny shoulders, her eyes always alert, always protective. "Here," he offered the blankets, watching as Emma deftly wrapped the baby first, then helped Olivia and finally covered herself. Her movements were precise, automatic, as if she had done this hundreds of times before. The silence inside the car was heavy. broken only by the muffled sound of the storm and the baby's occasional sobs. Jack could see 1,000 questions in the girl's eyes, but also a deep fear of answering them. Something had happened to these children, something that made them flee into a storm rather than seek help. "You must be hungry," he said softly, deciding not to push. From his own childhood, he knew some stories needed time before they could be told. "I know a safe place we can stop for something hot to eat. How does that sound?" Emma and Olivia exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. It was Olivia who answered, her little voice both small and hopeful. "Does it have hot chocolate?" Jack felt a smile, the first genuine one in a long time, forming on his lips. "Of course it has hot chocolate." He started the car, turning the heater on high. As he maneuvered back onto the highway, his mind was already planning the next steps. These children needed medical care, warm food, dry clothes, and protection. From whom or what, he still didn't know, but he sensed there was more to this story than 3 lost kids in the rain. Baby Noah coughed again, and Jack saw in the rearview mirror how Emma pulled him closer, her wide eyes filled with a fear no child should ever know. Something inside him, something he'd buried long ago with his own childhood tears, began to stir. "It's all right," he said softly, surprising even himself with the certainty in his voice. "You're safe now. I'll take care of you." And as the Porsche cut through the sheet of rain, Jack Thompson knew his life would never be the same. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside the car, 3 little hearts were beginning to feel something they had long forgotten. Hope, fate, that whimsical gambler, had just shuffled the cards once more. And this time, the stakes were the highest of all, the right to have a family. Jack awoke with a start, his neck sore from the awkward position in the armchair. The soft morning light crept in through the curtains, and for a moment he wondered why he wasn't in his own bed. Then the memories of the previous night hit him like a wave. The storm, the children, his impulsive decision. He rose quietly and walked to the guest room door. He cracked it open just enough to see the bed. Emma was sitting, fully alert, Noah in her arms. Her eyes met Jack's immediately. "Good morning," he whispered. "Did you sleep well?" The girl nodded slightly. Olivia was still sleeping soundly, her little hand clutching a unicorn print pajama top. "Noah's better," Emma informed in a low voice. "He's not as hot anymore. May I come in to check his temperature?" Another nod. Jack picked up the thermometer from the nightstand where he'd left it the night before and approached carefully. 99 degrees. The fever had dropped significantly. "How about some breakfast?" he suggested. "We can let Olivia sleep a bit longer." Emma hesitated, looking at her sister. "But what if she wakes up and doesn't see me?" "We'll leave the door open," Jack replied. "And you can listen if she calls." In the kitchen, Jack found that Helen had thought of everything. There were cereals, fruits, breads, milk, juice, a true children's breakfast. He watched in fascination as Emma prepared Noah's bottle with the same precision she'd shown the night before. "You're really good at that," he remarked casually, while pouring some cereal for her. "Mom taught me," Emma replied automatically. Then her eyes widened as if she'd said something she shouldn't have. She focused on Noah, avoiding Jack's gaze. Jack noticed the change and didn't press. Instead, he began cutting some fruit. "You know, I've never had kids in this house before. In fact, I barely use this kitchen. I usually eat at the office." "You live all by yourself in this huge house?" Emma asked, curiosity momentarily winning over her caution. "Yes. Well, Helen comes in every day, and the cleaning crew is here 3 times a week. But yes, I live alone." "Why?" The direct question caught him off guard. I guess I was always too busy with work." Emma seemed to consider that as she fed Noah. "Must be sad." It was Jack's turn to avoid eye contact. "Sometimes," he admitted softly. The sound of small footsteps interrupted them. Olivia appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair messy and unicorn pajamas askew. "Emma," she called, her voice still heavy with sleep. "Over here, Liv," Emma replied. "Do you want some cereal?" The younger girl approached, rubbing her eyes. She stopped upon seeing the generous spread on the table, her eyes going wide. "You can have whatever you want," Jack encouraged. Olivia looked at Emma, who nodded slightly. Only then did the little girl climb onto one of the chairs, accepting the bowl of cereal her sister slid toward her. Breakfast passed in relative silence, broken only by Noah's occasional sucking noises on his bottle and the clink of utensils. Jack noticed how Emma supervised Olivia's every bite, as if she was used to ensuring her sister ate properly. "There's a backyard out there," Jack commented when he saw the girls were finished. "A pretty big garden. Once Noah naps, would you like to see it?" Olivia's face lit up, but she quickly glanced at Emma. The older girl seemed torn between caution and wanting to please her sister. "Is there a swing?" Olivia asked timidly. "No," Jack admitted, "but we can fix that." He grabbed his phone and quickly texted Helen, "Need a full playground installed today in the backyard." The response came almost immediately. "Already on it, sir." Noah started fussing after his bottle, his eyes heavy with sleep. Emma rocked him automatically, but Jack could see she was also tired. "How about you all rest a little?" he suggested. "Maybe there's a cartoon on TV that Olivia would like to watch, and you can put Noah down." To his surprise, Emma agreed without resistance. Maybe the comfort of the previous night and the hearty breakfast had begun to lower her defenses, even just a bit. In the TV room, Jack turned on a children's channel and watched as Olivia settled on the couch, her eyes glued to the screen where colorful characters danced and sang. Emma sat next to her, Noah peacefully sleeping in her arms. "There's a portable crib in the corner," Jack pointed out. "Helen brought it this morning. Want me to help you place Noah in it?" Emma studied the crib for a moment before nodding. Together, they placed the baby inside, who didn't stir during the transfer. "You can rest too," Jack said softly. "I'll stay here in the armchair. No one will come in, I promise." The girl bit her lip, clearly fighting exhaustion. Olivia was already completely absorbed in the cartoon, humming softly along with the characters. "Just for a little bit," Emma finally agreed, settling on the couch beside her sister. Within minutes, her eyelids began to droop. Jack watched her struggle to keep her eyes open until she finally gave in to sleep. Only then did he allow his own silent tears to fall. These children had gone through something traumatic. That much was obvious. The way Emma behaved, how she protected her siblings, how she always seemed on alert. No 5-year-old should have such burdens. His phone buzzed with a message from Helen. "Playground installation crew will arrive in 1 hour. I've also arranged for new clothes, toys, and more supplies." "Should I bring them now?" Jack looked at the sleeping children. "Later," he replied. "Let them rest a bit." He got up quietly and went to the window. The day was surprisingly clear after the previous night's storm. A few trees had fallen in the garden, and the pool was filled with leaves. In a few hours, that space would be transformed into a children's paradise. His phone rang. The office. With a sigh, he declined the call and messaged his assistant. "I won't be in the office today. Cancel all appointments." He returned to his armchair, watching Emma's restless sleep, Olivia's soft smile as she dozed off with the cartoon still playing, and Noah's now regular breathing in the crib. He didn't know what had happened to these kids. He didn't know who their mother was or why they were alone in that storm, but he knew, with a certainty that came from the depths of his soul, that he would do anything to protect them. "Whatever it is you're running from," he whispered into the stillness of the room, "it's over, I promise." And Jack Thompson was not a man to break promises. The sound of excited voices in the backyard woke Jack from his doze in the armchair. He got up quickly, momentarily disoriented, until the events of the last 24 hours flooded back to him. Through the living room window, he saw Olivia jumping excitedly near the workers installing the playground, while Emma watched from a distance, Noah secure in her arms. "Mr. Jack," Olivia yelled when she spotted him through the glass. "Look how cool." He smiled, noting how the little one seemed more at ease after a few hours of sleep and a warm meal. Emma, on the other hand, maintained her watchful posture, though her eyes also sparkled at the sight of the slide being assembled. "It's almost ready," he said as he stepped into the yard. "Another hour or so, and you'll be able to play." That's when he noticed that Noah seemed fussy again, his face flushed from stifled crying. Emma was gently rocking him, but the worry in her eyes was evident. "He's hot again," she said quietly when Jack got closer. "Let's go inside and check his temperature," he suggested gently. "Olivia can stay here and watch the construction crew. She's safe with them." Emma hesitated, glancing at her sister. "Liv," she called, "stay where I can see you, okay?" In the kitchen, while Jack prepared a new bottle and got the fever reducer, he realized it was time. The kids had been with him for almost a day, and although he had respected their silence until now, he needed to know what had happened. "Emma," he began softly, sitting down at the table with her while Noah took his medicine, "I think we need to talk." The girl immediately tensed, her arms tightening around the baby. "About what?" "About how you all ended up on that road last night." Jack kept his voice gentle but firm. "I know it's hard to talk about, but I need to know so I can help you." Emma lowered her gaze, focusing on Noah. For a long moment, Jack thought she wouldn't respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "Mom got sick," she began. "Really sick. We lived, just the four of us, in a small apartment, but she always took good care of us. Even when she got weak, she still tried to do everything." Her voice faltered, and Jack resisted the urge to reach out, to offer comfort. He knew she needed to tell it in her own way. "It happened so fast," Emma continued, a tear rolling down her face. "One day she was just tired. The next she had to go to the hospital. She made me promise I'd look after Olivia and Noah, that I wouldn't let anyone separate us." Jack felt his heart clench. "And then?" "Then she never came back." Emma wiped her tear with the back of her hand. "People from the government came, said we'd go to a temporary place until they found us a family. But—" She paused, biting her lip. Jack could see the conflict in her eyes, the fear of saying too much, of trusting too much. "It's okay," he encouraged. "You can tell me." "They were going to send Olivia and Noah somewhere else." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I heard them talking when they thought I was asleep. They said babies are easier to adopt, that Olivia is still young, but I'm too old, nobody wants an older kid." The anger Jack felt was so intense, he had to take several deep breaths before he could speak. "So you ran away?" Emma nodded. "Mom had a sister in Albany. She mentioned her a few times, showed me old photos. I thought if we could just get there. Why didn't you ask for help at the orphanage? They wouldn't let us make phone calls, and when I tried to talk about my aunt, they said they'd already looked for all our family and no one could take us." Emma adjusted Noah in her arms, but I knew that was a lie. "They just wanted to separate us as soon as possible." Jack closed his eyes for a moment, trying to control his emotions. "How did you leave?" "At night, after everyone was asleep. I'd saved some dinner scraps, put clothes in a backpack. Noah cried a bit, but we got out through a first-floor window." There was a touch of pride in her voice. "We walked a lot, took the bus when we could, but then it started raining and Noah got sick." Her voice finally broke, and this time Jack couldn't hold back. He moved slowly so as not to frighten her and placed a hand on her shoulder. To his surprise, Emma didn't pull away. "You were very brave," he said softly. "Really brave. But now you don't have to run anymore." Emma raised her eyes, and there was so much fear and hope mingled in that gaze that Jack felt his chest tighten. Are you going to call them? Are you sending us back?" "No," he answered without hesitation. "I won't let anyone separate you. Promise, I promise." Noah chose that moment to let out a small burp, making Emma smile slightly. It was the first time Jack had seen a genuine smile on her face. "Our mum's name was Rachel," she said after a moment. "Rachel Martinez. She worked 2 jobs to take care of us. Even when she was really tired, she always told us stories before bed." Jack memorized the name, already planning to start a discreet investigation. "She sounds like she was a wonderful mother." "She was the best mum in the world," Emma whispered, more tears falling. "She made us feel safe, you know? Even when we didn't have much money, even when things were hard, she always said we were her family, that family stays together no matter what." From outside came Olivia's laughter, making Emma quickly look toward the window. The little one was still there, now helping one of the workers choose the color for the swing. "Liv doesn't really understand," Emma continued. "She knows Mom went to heaven, But I don't think she realizes it's forever. And Noah, he was so little, he won't remember her. The pain in her voice was palpable, and Jack felt his own tears threatening to fall. How could a 5-year-old carry so much weight? Emma, look at me, he asked gently. When she did, he went on, You're not alone anymore. I know you don't know me well yet, and you have every right not to trust me. But I promise you with all my heart that I'll do everything I can to keep you together and safe. Why? The question was genuine, her dark eyes studying Jack's face as if looking for any sign of deceit. Why do you care? Jack thought of his own story, of the scars he carried from his childhood. But now wasn't the time to share all that. Because no child should go through what you went through, he answered simply, and because, from the moment I saw you on that road, something inside me changed. I can't explain it, but I know I was meant to find you. Emma considered his words for a long moment. Then, to Jack's complete surprise, she leaned slightly toward him, allowing him to wrap an arm around her shoulders while she still held Noah. I'm tired, she admitted in a whisper, tired of being strong all the time. I know, Jack replied, his own voice quavering. I know, sweetheart, but now you can rest a bit. Let me be strong for you. They stayed like that for several minutes, the silence broken only by Noah's soft breathing and the distant sounds of Olivia playing in the yard. Jack could feel small tremors shaking Emma's body, years of fear and responsibility finally finding a release. Emma! Mr. Jack! Olivia's excited voice came from the kitchen door. The swing is ready. Come see. Emma straightened up quickly, wiping her face, but something was different in her eyes now, a tiny spark of hope. Do you want to go see the swing? Jack asked gently. Yes, she replied, and for the first time, her voice sounded like a 5-year-old's. But first, could you hold Noah for a bit? My arms are tired. The request, so simple yet laden with meaning, made Jack's heart swell. Carefully, he took the baby, who merely snuggled against him without waking. Go on and join your sister, he said. We're fine here. He watched as Emma walked to Olivia, who immediately grabbed her hand and started pulling her toward the yard, chattering about how she'd helped choose the playground's colors. Lowering his eyes to Noah, sleeping peacefully in his arms, Jack whispered, Your mom did an amazing job. And now it's my turn to take care of you. The morning wore on, bringing with it the promise of a new beginning. In the yard, the sound of the girls' laughter mingled with birdsong. And there, in the once lonely kitchen of his mansion, Jack Thompson finally understood what family truly meant. Jack was watching the girls playing in the garden through the kitchen window when the first memory struck him. It was one of those recollections he kept locked away, together with all the other painful memories of his childhood. It was a summer day, and 7-year-old Jack was sitting on the front steps of the rundown building where he lived with his mother. The paint was peeling. The hallways always smelled of mold. Sarah Thompson arrived from work wearing the rumpled uniform from the hospital where she was a cleaning assistant, deep circles under her tired eyes. What are you doing out here alone, Jackie? Waiting for you, Mom, he answered, jumping up to hug her. The sound of Noah's crying brought him back to the present. The baby had woken in his arms and was fussing, probably hungry. Emma, he called through the window. Noah's awake. Come help me with his bottle. The girl left the swing where she and Olivia had been playing and hurried inside. Her eyes, once so distrustful, now held something close to acceptance when she looked at Jack. While Emma prepared the bottle with her usual competence, another memory intruded on his thoughts. Mom, you need to see a doctor, young Jack insisted as he watched his mother cough violently. I can't miss work, honey, Sarah replied between coughing fits. We need the money from my extra shift. Then let me skip school so I can take care of you. Sarah cupped his face in her hands. Never, you hear? Never skip school. It's your only chance at a better life. Mr. Jack? Emma's voice brought him back. Are you okay? He blinked, realizing his eyes were wet with tears. Yes, sweetheart. I was just remembering some things. Emma studied him with that intense gaze that seemed to look into his soul. You lost your mom too, didn't you? The question caught him off guard. How do you know that? By the way you look at us sometimes, she replied, testing the milk's temperature on her wrist. "It's the same look I see in the mirror when I think about Mom." Jack felt his heart twist. How could a 5-year-old be so perceptive? "Yes," he admitted softly. "I lost my mother when I was about your age." The most painful memory of all surfaced without warning. The hospital corridor was cold. Jack huddled in a waiting room chair, his legs swinging above the floor. The social worker, Sandra's, was talking about advanced pneumonia and pre-existing conditions, but all he understood was that his mother wasn't coming back. "Do you have any relatives we can contact?" Jack shook his head. It had always been just him and his mom, always. "Is that why you helped us?" Emma asked, interrupting the memory. "Partly," Jack replied, gently adjusting Noah so he could drink from his bottle more comfortably. "But mainly because no child should go through what I went through, what you're going through." From outside came the sound of Olivia's laughter, discovering a cat wandering along the garden wall. "What happened then?" Emma asked quietly. "After your mom, you know." Jack took a deep breath. He had never told anyone this story. "I went to an orphanage," he began, noticing how Emma gave him her full attention. "I stayed there for 3 years, watching other kids get adopted, always the younger ones. I studied hard, got a scholarship to a boarding school, and promised myself one day I'd help other children in the same situation." "And now you have this big house," Emma remarked, looking around at the luxurious kitchen. "Yes," Jack answered with a sad smile. "But you know something, it was never really a home. Not until we got here," Emma finished. "Yes," he admitted. "Not until you arrived." Noah was fiddling with Jack's fingers, letting out small, happy noises. Emma watched the scene with an expression that combined longing and hope. "Mom always said home isn't a place," she said. "It's wherever your family is." The voice of his own mother echoed in his memory. "Home is wherever there's love, Jackie. It doesn't matter if it's small or simple. What matters is the love inside." "Your mother was a very wise woman," Jack commented, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Emma," Olivia called from the yard. "The cat, let me pet it." "Go ahead," Jack encouraged, seeing how Emma was torn between wanting to play and the responsibility of caring for Noah. "I'll look after him." "You deserve to be a kid too." Emma hesitated for a moment, then did something unexpected. She stood on tiptoe and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek before running outside. Jack froze, feeling that spot on his cheek burn like a brand. Noah gurgled in his arms, as if amused by his shock. The last memory of his mother appeared softly in his mind. "I love you, Jackie. Never forget that. No matter what happens, don't let anyone take your heart away." Tears streamed down his face, but for the first time in decades, they weren't only tears of pain. There was hope now, rebirth, possibility. From outside came the girl's laughter and the occasional meow of the cat. The midday sun cast golden patterns across the kitchen floor. Noah slept in his arms, one tiny finger clutching Jack's shirt. In that moment, Jack Thompson understood that his life had come full circle. Years ago, he'd been the scared, lonely boy. Now, fate had placed 3 children in the same predicament before him. Not by coincidence, but because only someone who knew that pain could truly understand how to heal it. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered. "Now I understand." Outside, Emma was introducing the cat formally to Olivia, who squealed with delight. The animal, a plump orange tabby, seemed perfectly content with the girls. Jack watched the scene with a smile, feeling his heart, so long protected by the armor of corporate success and solitude, soften more with every peal of childish laughter. The memories of his own childhood, once so painful, now had a new purpose, guiding him in his mission to give these children everything he himself had lost. His mother's voice echoed one last time. "Sometimes we need to walk certain paths in order to help others cross them later." And there, in that golden afternoon of transformations, Jack finally understood. It wasn't just about surviving loss and loneliness. It was about turning them into compassion and love. It was about using his own scars as maps to guide others through the dark. It was about turning an empty mansion into a home and 3 frightened children into a family. "Mr. Jack," Olivia called, "come see. The cat does tricks." "I'm coming, sweetheart," he replied, smiling. "I'm coming." And as he walked toward the garden with Noah in his arms, Jack felt as if his mother were there, smiling in approval. The frightened little boy he'd once been had finally found his way home, not through material achievements, but through the love of three little hearts who, like his own, just needed a chance to begin again. The transformation was only beginning, but for the first time in his life, Jack Thompson wasn't afraid of change, because now he knew sometimes it takes a storm to wash the soul and allow something new to bloom. "Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, have you completely lost your mind?" Helen's voice echoed through the mansion's study, where Jack had just explained his plans for the next few days. His longtime assistant looked at him as though he had suddenly grown a second head. "Helen, I know it sounds crazy, but..." "Sounds? Sir, you brought 3 unknown children home, cancelled every appointment this week, and now you're telling me you plan to keep them here indefinitely." She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "You need to think about the legal implications." As if to underscore Helen's point, a sharp cry sounded from upstairs. Jack immediately stood, his body automatically reacting to the sound. "Noah's awake," he explained, already heading to the door. "Jack." Her use of his first name made him pause. Helen rarely addressed him that way. "You can't just ignore your responsibilities. The company can wait," he cut her off, more brusquely than he intended. Softening his tone, he added, "For the first time in my life, Helen, I have something more important to do." He left his stunned assistant in the study and took the stairs 2 at a time. In the room that had been quickly converted into a nursery, he found Emma already trying to calm her brother. "I think he has colic," she said worriedly. "He always cries like this when he's in pain." Jack picked the baby up carefully, recalling what he'd read the previous night about colic. "Let's try that massage you showed me." As they worked together to soothe Noah, Jack couldn't help but notice how drastically his life had changed in just 3 days. The mansion, once silent and orderly, was now full of scattered toys, children's clothes on an improvised laundry rack, and countless other signs of a little family's presence. "Mr. Jack," Olivia's voice came from the hallway. "The cleaning lady won't let me play in the living room." Yes, that was another challenge. The household staff were struggling to adapt to the new situation. Maria, the housekeeper who had been with him for years, seemed especially distressed about children messing up her perfectly maintained home. "Maria," he called, still rocking Noah, "please come here." The housekeeper appeared in the doorway, her usually serene face marked by barely disguised disapproval. "Sir, the children can play in any room of the house," he said firmly. "If something breaks, we'll replace it, but they need to feel comfortable here." Maria pressed her lips together but nodded. "Yes, sir. And what about the Persian rugs?" Jack nearly laughed at her concern for his very expensive rugs. "Maria, they're just rugs. The children are more important." The shocked expression on her face almost made him laugh out loud, almost because he was surprised by his own words too, not by the sentiment itself, but by realizing how completely his priorities had changed in such a short time. The rest of the day passed in the controlled chaos that was becoming his new normal. Between diaper changes, which he was still learning to manage without creating disasters, making meals, who knew kids could be so picky about food, and attempts to establish some sort of routine, Jack barely had time to breathe. In the afternoon, a new crisis arose when his lawyer, Richard, showed up unannounced. "Jack, we need to talk about your absence at the board meetings," the lawyer began as soon as he entered the study. Then he stopped, noticing Olivia intently coloring in a corner of the room. "What?" "Long story," Jack interrupted. "What's going on with the meetings? The shareholders are worried. You've cancelled all appointments this week. You're not answering emails, ignoring calls. Rumors are starting that you're having some sort of nervous breakdown." Jack was about to respond when Emma burst in. "Mr. Jack, Noah has a fever again." Without hesitation, he got to his feet. "Sorry, Richard. We have an emergency." "Jack, you can't just..." "Yes, I can," he replied, already leaving the room with Emma. "Schedule a virtual meeting for tomorrow. I'll attend from home." The next few hours were spent caring for Noah, who thankfully only had a mild fever. Emma didn't leave his side, her little forehead creased with worry. He's going to be okay, Jack reassured her, sliding an arm around the girl's shoulders. Sometimes babies get fevers when they're teething. Are you sure? Positive. I read all about it last night. Emma looked at him with a mix of surprise and something else. Something that made Jack's heart skip a beat. Trust. She was starting to trust him. Night brought its own challenges. Olivia had a nightmare and woke up crying for her mum. Jack found her sobbing in the bedroom, Emma desperately trying to calm her. "Come here, sweetheart," he called gently, opening his arms. To his surprise, Olivia ran to him, burying her face in his chest. "I want Mom," she sobbed. Jack felt his heart break. "I know, darling. I know." He sat on the bed with her in his lap, Emma cuddled at his side. He began to softly sing an old lullaby his own mother used to sing, the words returning to his memory as though they'd never left. When Olivia finally drifted back to sleep, he realized Emma had also dozed off, her head resting on his arm. Gently, so as not to wake them, he settled both girls into bed and pulled up the covers. Only when he returned to his own room did he let the tears fall. It was all so overwhelming. The sudden, intense love he felt for these children, the fear of not being enough, the crushing responsibility of caring for 3 vulnerable lives. The next morning, his corporate routine of video conferences was entirely transformed by the children's presence. In the middle of an important meeting with investors, Noah decided it was time for a particularly challenging diaper change. "Gentlemen, excuse me for a moment," Jack said diplomatically, trying to keep his composure while Noah squirmed on the changing table. "Thompson, we're discussing the company's future," one of the shareholders protested. "And I'm discussing a very dirty diaper," Jack replied without thinking, eliciting surprised laughter from some participants. Emma saved the day, appearing silently to help with the change. Her small, agile fingers accomplished in seconds what Jack still struggled to do in minutes. "Thank you," he whispered to her when they were finished. Emma shrugged, but there was a tiny smile on her lips. "You still have a lot to learn." The statement hit him harder than expected. Yes, he had so much to learn. About diapers, children's routines, about being a father. Father. The word echoed in his mind, terrifying and wonderful at the same time. The day continued in its controlled chaos. Helen showed up with more purchases, this time clothes specifically chosen for each child, now that she knew their exact sizes. Jack noticed that his assistant, despite her initial concerns, had selected each piece with obvious care. "These dresses are so pretty," Olivia exclaimed upon seeing the new outfits, twirling around in a floral skirt. Helen tried to keep her professional demeanor, but Jack saw the smile that escaped when Olivia impulsively hugged her. "Thank you," he said when the girls left to try on the clothes. "I still think you're crazy," Helen replied, though her tone had softened considerably. "But they're special, aren't they?" "They are," Jack agreed, watching Emma help Olivia with the buttons on a dress. "They're everything." That night, after the children finally fell asleep, Jack allowed himself a moment of reflection in his study. The past 72 hours had been the most challenging of his life, and also the most significant. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "We need to formalize the kids' situation. There's a lot of paperwork ahead." Jack sighed, knowing his lawyer was right. There would be legal battles, investigations, questions. But as he looked at the photo Helen had taken earlier, him with the 3 children in the backyard, all smiling, he knew he would face anything for them. A gentle cry called him upstairs again. This time it was Olivia, who had gone to sleep in Emma's room after the previous night's nightmare. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" he asked, entering the room. "I just wanted to see if you were really here," she replied drowsily. His heart swelled with love. "I'm always here," he promised, tucking the blanket around her. "Always." And as he watched his 3 children sleeping, and yes, in his heart, they were his, Jack knew that no matter how many challenges lay ahead, some things were worth any sacrifice. The cold, calculating businessman he used to be would have seen this entire situation as an unnecessary risk, an avoidable complication. But that man no longer existed. In his place stood someone who finally understood that the greatest risks in life often bring the greatest rewards. and there was no greater reward than the love of those 3 children. It was late at night when Jack finally had a moment to himself in his study. The kids were fast asleep after a busy day on the new playground, and the mansion was quiet, save for the soft sound of rain outside. "Rachel Martinez," he murmured, typing the name into his laptop. It was time to learn more about the children's mother. The screen yielded few relevant results, some outdated social media pages, mentions in old phone directories, nothing substantial. Jack grabbed his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. "Michael? It's Jack Thompson. I need a favor." He paused, listening to the response on the other end. "Yes, I know it's late, but it's urgent and extremely confidential." Michael Santos was the best private investigator in New York, known for his discretion and efficiency. Jack had used his services a few times for due diligence on major acquisitions. "I need everything you can find on Rachel Martinez. She passed away about a month ago. She had 3 children, Emma, Olivia, and Noah." Jack hesitated before continuing. "And Michael, it's personal, very personal." After giving all the details he had, Jack hung up and leaned back in his chair. His gaze drifted to the photo of the children now gracing his desk. A snapshot Helen had taken of them in the yard, all 3 smiling at the camera. How had their lives become so intertwined in such a profound way, so quickly? A noise at the door made him turn. Emma stood there, her sleepy but alert eyes on him. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. She shook her head and walked into the study. Her eyes roamed over the computer screens, where various searches about her mother were still open. "You're looking for stuff about Mom?" she asked directly. Jack considered lying, but something in her gaze made him change his mind. "Yes. I want to understand your story better so I can help." Emma climbed into one of the leather chairs, looking suddenly very small. "I can tell you some things if you want. Only if you feel comfortable," Jack replied, closing the laptop to give her his full attention. "Mom worked a lot," Emma began, her voice low but steady. "In the mornings, she cleaned offices, and in the afternoon she looked after kids at a daycare. Sometimes she baked cakes to sell too." Jack made mental notes. Rachel seemed like a determined woman, doing everything she could to support her children. "And you all lived in a small apartment, but it was nice. Mom always kept flowers in the window." Emma smiled slightly at the memory. "There was an old lady living upstairs, Mrs. Clark. She took care of us when Mom had to work late." Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Preliminary results in 24 hours. Found something interesting in the hospital records." "Emma," Jack asked gently, "do you know which hospital your mom stayed in?" "St. Luke's," she replied. "Downtown. It was far from home, but Mom said they had the best doctors." Another piece of the puzzle. Jack passed the information to Michael immediately. "What about your father?" he asked cautiously. "Did your mom ever talk about him?" Emma frowned, thinking, "Almost never. One time, when she was really sad, I heard her talking to Mrs. Clark. Something about him not knowing about us, that it was better that way." Jack felt a strange sensation in the pit of his stomach, a hunch he couldn't explain. Morning brought new discoveries. Michael arrived early, carrying a thick folder of documents. "You sure you want to do this?" the investigator asked after explaining his initial findings. "Some of this is complicated." "Go on," Jack insisted. "Rachel Martinez, 28, worked 2 jobs, as we knew. Clean record, bills paid, no legal issues." Michael checked his notes. "The interesting part begins with the children's birth certificates. The father section is blank on all of them, but she tried to contact someone before she died. Several calls to the same number in her last few weeks." Jack picked up the hospital report Michael offered. As he read, his heart began to beat faster. Something here didn't add up, or maybe it added up too well. "I need you to dig deeper," he said to Michael. "Much deeper. Especially about that phone number." After the investigator left, Jack spent a long time gazing out his study window. In the garden, Emma was pushing Olivia on the swing while Noah slept in a stroller nearby. The peaceful domestic scene clashed starkly with the storm brewing in his mind. Helen entered without knocking, something she only did in emergencies. "I found this in the old archives," she said, setting a yellowed folder on his desk. "Thought you should see it." Jack opened it and felt the air leave his lungs. It was an old lease agreement for one of the first buildings his company had managed about 6 years ago. The tenant's name, Rachel Martinez. "This can't be a coincidence," he murmured. "There's more." Helen hesitated. "Remember the cleaning staff member you helped a few years back? The one whose medical treatment you paid for?" A chill ran down his spine. "It can't be. It was her, Jack. Rachel worked for you for 3 months before resigning suddenly. Shortly after what?" Helen looked uncomfortable. "Shortly after she discovered she was pregnant." Jack sat down heavily in his chair, his mind spinning with the implications, the dates, the places, the coincidences. His phone rang. It was Michael again. "Thompson, you need to see this. I just found her will. There's a letter addressed to you. A letter to me." "How is that possible?" "I don't know, but it's at the courthouse. And there's more. I found records of regular bank deposits into her account. Small but consistent. The source is an offshore account that leads directly to me," Jack finished, a heaviness forming in his chest. At that moment, a child's laughter drifted in from the yard. Jack looked outside again, focusing on Emma. Her dark hair, her determined eyes, her fierce will, traits he saw every day in the mirror. "My God," he whispered, the puzzle pieces finally falling into place. The study door opened again, and Olivia ran in. "Mr. Jack, come see what Emma taught the cat to do." He glanced at the little girl, her bright smile, her boundless energy. How hadn't he realized it sooner? "I'll be right there, sweetheart," he answered automatically, mind still reeling. Helen watched him anxiously. "What are you going to do?" "First, I'm going to get that letter," he said, standing up. "Then I'm going to find out why Rachel never told me about them." In the garden, Emma had managed to teach the cat to give its paw. Her face glowed with pride as she demonstrated the trick. Jack felt his heart clench as he watched her, not just for the affection he already felt, but for what he was beginning to suspect. "Mr. Jack," she called when she saw him. "Are you okay? You look weird." "I'm fine," he forced a smile. "Just thinking about a few things." Emma studied him with that same intensity that had first struck him on the highway, the same intensity he'd had as a child, according to his mother. "Is it about Mom?" she asked softly so Olivia wouldn't hear. "Yes," he answered honestly. "But don't worry. Say it's good things." Emma nodded, seeming to accept his answer. She returned her attention to the cat, but Jack noticed she was watching him from the corner of her eye. His phone vibrated with another text from Michael. "I found old photos. You'll want to see these." Jack took a deep breath, sensing his life was about to change even more. The puzzle pieces were all there, waiting to be assembled, and something told him that once he saw the full picture, it would be far more impactful than he could have imagined. "Helen," he called softly, "cancel all my appointments this week. I have a letter to pick up." Out in the garden, Emma was now teaching Olivia how to make the cat give its paw. Noah had woken up and was watching everything with bright, curious eyes. Jack stood in the doorway, feeling his heart torn between fear of what he was about to learn and the certainty that no matter what that letter revealed, these children were already his family. The mystery of Rachel Martinez was about to be unveiled, and with it, secrets that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. The manila envelope Michael delivered that morning felt heavier than its few ounces of paper suggested. Jack held it with slightly trembling hands, knowing that inside lay the final pieces of Rachel's story. "Are you sure you want to open this now?" Helen asked quietly. "The kids are at school," Jack finished. "This is the perfect time." Inside, he found a diary, some old photos, and a letter addressed to Emma to be given when she turned 18. Jack hesitated before opening the diary. It felt like an invasion of privacy, even though Rachel was no longer here. "She wanted you to know," Helen said, as if reading his mind. "That's why she arranged it this way." With a heavy sigh, Jack began to read. "Dear Diary, today I saw Jack Thompson again. He didn't notice me. Why would he? I'm just another member of the cleaning crew in his empire, but there's something about him, a loneliness I recognize, because it's the same as mine. They say he's cold, calculating, But today I saw him stop to help an elderly lady who'd dropped her groceries at the building entrance. I saw kindness in his eyes, the care in his actions, and I thought, how can someone like that be so alone? Jack paused in his reading, faintly recalling that day. It had been right before the company's holiday party where, he continued, the pages revealing how Rachel observed him from afar, noticing small details everyone else overlooked, how he always made sure there was fresh coffee for the cleaning staff, how he greeted everyone by name regardless of their position. Then he reached the entry that changed everything. It happened. At the holiday party, we finally talked for real, not as boss and employee, but as two people. He told me about his tough childhood, about losing his mother at a young age. I shared my dreams, my fears, my hope for a better future. One drink turned into two, and then his eyes held so much loneliness, such a longing for connection, just like mine. I know it was only one night. I know tomorrow we'll go back to being who we always were, him, the successful businessman, me, the dreamer who cleans his offices. But for a few hours, we were just Jack and Rachel, two solitary souls finding comfort in each other. Jack's hands trembled violently now. Memories of that night, long buried under years of work and isolation, resurfaced with startling clarity. Rachel. Of course, how had I not recognized her name before? She was different then, younger, lighter, without the weight of the responsibilities that would come later. They had talked for hours, about dreams and fears, about their difficult childhoods, about hope. He forced himself to read on. A few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I wanted to tell him God knows how many times I picked up the phone. But then I saw the news. Jack Thompson closes a $1 billion deal, the business prodigy. He was soaring, and I was just a cleaner who fell in love with her boss. I quit my job before my pregnancy became obvious. I used the money he gave me for medical treatment to start a new life. And when Emma was born, Jack gasped, tears now flowing freely down his face. When Emma was born, with eyes so much like his, I knew I'd made the right choice. He had an empire to build. What right did I have to complicate his life with an unexpected child? The years passed. I met someone, a good man who didn't mind raising Emma as his own. We had Olivia, and for a time I was truly happy. But he died in an accident before Noah was born. And then the diary shook in Jack's hands. Outside, he could hear Emma, his daughter, his firstborn, telling Olivia something, probably about their day at school. When I discovered my illness, I knew I had to tell him, not for me, but for them. Emma is your daughter, Jack. And though Olivia and Noah aren't biologically yours, in my heart, they've always been siblings. I'm not asking for anything. I know it's a lot to take in, and you have every right to ignore this letter. But if one day, by some miracle, you meet these kids, please don't separate them. They only have each other now, and Jack, forgive me for not giving you the chance to choose, for taking away years you could have had with Emma. I did what I believed was right at the time, but now, near the end, I'm not so sure. With love, 3/87. Rachel. The paper slipped from his trembling fingers. For a long moment, Jack sat paralyzed, his mind a storm of emotions and memories. Emma, his daughter, the determined eyes, the fierce will, the keen intelligence. It all made sense now. How had he not seen it before? How had he not noticed his own reflection in that little 5-year-old warrior? A sob tore from his throat, then another, until he was crying openly. Years of loneliness and emptiness finally made sense, finally had a reason. Mr. Jack? The voice of Emma, his daughter, my God, his daughter, brought his head up. She stood at the study door, his eyes wide with concern. Emma, his voice broke. Come here, honey. She approached hesitantly, clearly frightened by his tears. Jack lifted her onto his lap, hugging her with all the love he hadn't known he'd been missing for 6 years. Why are you crying? She asked softly. Because, how could he explain? How could he tell this child he was the father she never knew she had? Sometimes we cry when we discover something very, very special. Emma studied him with that intensity he recognized as his own. Is it about Mom? Did you find out something? Jack took a deep breath. Yes, sweetheart. I found out something really important, Something your mom wanted me to know. What? Emma? He held her tiny hands in his. Your mom left me a letter. A very special letter that explains why finding you that night wasn't an accident. The girl frowned, confused. What do you mean? A long time ago, before you were born, I met your mum. We cared about each other a lot. And tears fell again. Emma, I'm your father. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma sat completely still in his lap, her eyes locked on his, searching for truth. Lies. Hope. My dad. Her voice was just a whisper. Yes, sweet girl. I didn't know. Your mom never told me. But now... He gently touched her face. Now I know why my heart recognized you that night. Why I had to stop the car. Why I couldn't leave you there. But Emma struggled with her words. What about Olivia and Noah? They're your siblings, Jack replied firmly. Family, and now they're my children too, if you all want that. Emma gazed at him for a long time, and Jack saw the exact moment comprehension dawned. Her eyes, his eyes, filled with tears. That's why you're so much like me, she whispered. That's why we make the same face when we think hard. Jack laughed through his tears. Yes, sweetheart, and we have the same crooked smile and the same stubborn streak. I always wanted a dad, Emma confessed softly, resting her head against his chest. I always wondered what it would be like. Forgive me, Jack murmured into her hair, for not being there before. If I had known... It wasn't your fault, she responded with a wisdom beyond her years. Mom must have had her reasons. They stayed like that for a long moment, father and daughter recognizing each other, years of absence filled with love and understanding. Emma, came Olivia's voice from the yard. Come see what the cat did. Emma straightened quickly, suddenly worried. What about Liv? How do we tell her? Gently and with love, Jack replied. They're your siblings, and now they're my kids too. Nothing will change that. Promise you won't separate us? Never, Jack swore solemnly. You three are a package deal, my complete package. Emma smiled, that crooked smile he now recognized as an inherited trait, and hopped off his lap. Then come on, she said, extending her hand. Let's tell them we have a dad now. Jack took her small hand, amazed at how perfectly it fit in his. Together, they walked to the backyard, where Olivia and Noah were playing under Helen's watchful eye. Glancing at his 3 children, yes, his, all of them, Jack felt his heart overflow with love. The emptiness he'd carried all his life finally made sense. It was exactly the size of a family. Liv, Noah, Emma called, her voice quivering with emotion. We have something to tell you. And as the afternoon sun bathed the garden in golden light, Jack Thompson finally understood that sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as storms. Because on that rainy night, when he stopped to help 3 abandoned children, he hadn't just saved them, he'd saved himself, filling a void he never even knew existed, completing a circle fate had begun 6 years earlier. He was a father, father to Emma, father to Olivia, father to Noah. And nothing in the world, no company, no fortune, no empire, could compare to the richness of that discovery. The Mendes and Associates law firm occupied the entire 20th floor of a mirrored building in downtown New York. Jack observed the city through the window while Richard, his longtime attorney, explained the complexities of the process ahead of them. It won't be easy, Jack, Richard warned, spreading documents on the mahogany table. Emma being your biological daughter helps in part, but there's still the fact you took the children in without immediately notifying the authorities. And the joint adoption of Olivia and Noah, well, that's another challenge altogether. Jack turned to face him, determination etched on his features. How long? Best case scenario, 6 months. Worst case. Richard hesitated. It could take years. Years. Jack felt his stomach drop. And in the meantime, the children would have to return to the system, wait in foster care while the process... No way, Jack interrupted harshly. There has to be another way. Richard sighed, rifling through his folder. There is one possibility. It's unconventional, but with your resources and influence, whatever it takes, Jack declared. Money is no object. It's not about money, Jack. It's about proving you're the best option for these kids. And for that, we need a solid strategy. For the next 2 hours, they dove into a sea of paperwork, legal strategies, and planning. When Jack finally left the firm, he felt the weight of the battle he was about to fight. At home, he found a scene that made his heart tighten. Emma was helping Olivia with a coloring assignment, while Noah napped peacefully in a makeshift playpen in the living room. Helen observed discreetly from the kitchen. "Daddy!" Olivia shouted when she saw him. The word was still new. It still made his heart skip every time he heard it. Emma looked up from her coloring, and Jack saw immediately that she sensed his worry. His daughter was always extraordinarily perceptive. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly when he leaned down to kiss her forehead. "It will be," he promised, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The following days were a race against time. Jack split his hours between meetings with lawyers, visits to courthouses and government offices, and attempts to maintain some normalcy for the children. The psychological evaluations are crucial, Dr. Marina, a child psychologist recommended by Richard, explained. "We need to demonstrate that the children are well adjusted and that separating them now would be traumatic." Jack watched through the one-way glass as the professional conducted a session with Emma and Olivia. His heart clenched at how his girls interacted. The bond between them was palpable, unbreakable. "They're extraordinary," Dr. Marina commented afterward, especially Emma. "Her emotional maturity is remarkable for her age." "She had to grow up too fast," Jack replied, a familiar mix of pride and sadness in his voice. The social worker's visits were particularly stressful. Mariana Prado was a stern woman who seemed determined to find fault in everything. "Mr. Thompson," she said on her first visit, "I understand your intentions are good, but there are procedures to follow. You can't just decide to keep 3 kids because you found them in the street." "It wasn't a random decision," Jack replied, keeping his voice calm despite his rising irritation. "Emma is my biological daughter, and her siblings are an inseparable part of her." "Half-siblings," Mariana corrected coolly. "Siblings," Jack insisted. "Family is not defined by DNA." The legal fight sapped his energy, but his moments at home kept him strong. Like the night he found all 3 kids asleep in his bed after Olivia had another nightmare. "They couldn't sleep," Helen explained gently. "Emma said you always make them feel safe." Jack looked at the 3 sleeping faces and felt tears in his eyes. How could anyone think of separating these children? The case crawled through its bureaucratic path, each small victory celebrated like a major triumph. The confirmation of Emma's paternity by DNA testing was a significant milestone. "This greatly strengthens our case," Richard explained. "Now we can argue that separating the siblings would violate the principle of the children's best interests." But a seemingly simple moment turned into one of their greatest triumphs. During a supervised visit, Noah, who was just starting to speak, called Jack Papa for the first time. The social worker observing couldn't help but notice how the billionaire immediately dropped his papers to pick up the baby, eyes shining with joy. "He's never said that before?" she asked, her tone less harsh than usual. "Not so clearly," Jack replied, still in awe. "He babbles a lot, but this was special." Mariana made a few notes on her clipboard, and Jack could have sworn he saw a small smile on her lips. Weeks turned into months. The mansion, once cold and impersonal, blossomed with life. Children's drawings decorated the walls. Toys were scattered in a controlled mess, and laughter echoed through the halls. "Now you've changed, Issa," Helen remarked one day as they watched the children play in the garden. "How so?" "Before it was all work, meetings, deals. Now," she smiled, "now you're alive." Jack knew she was right. His priorities had shifted completely. The important calls now came from Emma's school. The non-negotiable appointments were Olivia's ballet recitals, and the critical meetings were family gatherings at the end of the day. The transformation didn't go unnoticed by the adoption team. The final psychological report was particularly moving. There is a remarkable bond between Mr. Thompson and the children. The emotional connection transcends biological aspects, demonstrating a genuine paternal relationship with all 3 minors. Separating this family unit at this point would potentially harm the children's emotional development. But an unexpected crisis finally turned the tide. Noah fell ill with pneumonia, landing him in the hospital on short notice. Jack spent 3 days and nights at his son's side, alternating between silent prayers and gentle talks with the baby. Emma and Olivia refused to leave, sleeping in uncomfortable chairs, always holding hands. The scene moved even the toughest nurses. "That's what family is," one of them commented to Mariana, who was there for a supervision visit. "No paperwork proves it more than that." When Noah was finally discharged, the social worker requested a meeting with Jack. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her tone softer than usual, "I've spent the last few months looking for reasons not to recommend this adoption. It was my job, after all, to ensure these children truly belong where they are." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. "But after observing your dedication, the evident love among you, the unity of this family," she smiled for the first time, "it would be cruel to separate what fate so clearly brought together." Her positive recommendation was a turning point in the process. Obstacles remained, documents to sign, court hearings to attend, but there was now certainty. "Dad?" Emma called one night as he tucked the children into bed. "We're going to stay together forever, right?" Jack looked at his 3 miracles, Emma with her determined eyes so much like his, Olivia with her smile that could light up the darkest day, Noah hugging his teddy bear, and felt an absolute certainty fill his chest. "Forever," he promised. "Nothing and no one will separate our family." And as he watched his children drift off to sleep, Jack Thompson knew he had found his true purpose, not in the skyscrapers he'd built, not in the deals he'd closed, but right there in that cheerfully painted room among teddy bears and storybooks. He was a father, and that was undoubtedly the greatest achievement of his life. The legal battle continued, but the end was now clearly visible on the horizon. And when that day came, when he finally had the adoption papers in hand, it would only be the official recognition of what his heart had known since that stormy night. These children were his. This was his family, and for them he would move mountains, face armies, fight the whole world if need be. Because sometimes the truest love doesn't come from bloodlines, but from the storms that bring us exactly where we're meant to be. The envelope Michael handed over that morning felt heavier than its mere sheets of paper. Jack held it with trembling hands, knowing that inside were the last pieces of Rachel's puzzle. "Are you sure you want to see this now?" Helen asked quietly. "The children. They're at school," Jack replied. "This is the perfect moment." Inside were a diary, some old photos, and a letter addressed to Emma, to be given to her at 18. Jack paused before opening the diary. Reading it felt like a final intrusion, but Rachel had left it for him, carefully labeled and sealed. "She wanted you to know," Helen reminded him. "That's why she organized it all." With a long exhale, Jack began to read. "Dear Diary, I saw Jack Thompson again today. He didn't notice me. Why would he? I'm just another member of his cleaning staff. But there's something in him, a loneliness I recognize because I feel it too. They say he's cold and calculating, but today I watched him stop to help a woman who spilled her groceries. I saw kindness in his eyes, and I wondered, how can someone like that be so lonely?" Jack paused, recalling that day vaguely. It was just before the holiday party where he kept reading, each page gradually revealing how Rachel watched him from the sidelines, noticing details everyone else ignored, like how he always left coffee ready for the cleaning crew, or how he greeted everyone by name. Then he reached the entry that changed everything. It happened. At the holiday party, we finally spoke. Not as boss and employee, but as 2 people. He told me about losing his mother so young, about his difficult childhood. I told him about my dreams of studying, of wanting a better life for my future family. 1 drink turned into 2, and then his eyes held so much loneliness, the same longing I feel. I know we'll go back to who we were the next day, but for a few hours, we were just Jack and Rachel, 2 lonely souls finding solace in each other. The subsequent pages talked about her pregnancy, her fear, her hesitation. Rachel had considered telling him many times, even went to his building but always lost her nerve at the last moment. How can I do this to him? He's on the verge of the biggest deal of his life. The media can't stop talking about his success. An unexpected pregnancy with a cleaning staff member? I can't do that to him. I can't be another burden. Jack felt tears slide down his cheeks. If only she had known. If only she had told him. The next entries detailed Emma's birth, her first steps, everything. Rachel meticulously recorded each milestone, as though saving it all for a day she might share it. Emma looked so much like him, not just physically, but in little gestures, the way she furrows her brow when she's focused, the crooked smile when she's up to something. Sometimes it hurts to watch Jack on the news, knowing he has no idea about the wonderful daughter he has. Then came the parts about Carlos, the man who accepted Emma as his own, married Rachel, and fathered Olivia. Those years were clearly happy ones. Carlos is a blessing. He loves Emma as though she were his. And now with Olivia, we finally have the family I always dreamed of. But sometimes, when I see Emma and Olivia playing, I think about Jack. Would he want to know he has a daughter? Would he forgive me for keeping it secret? Carlos's tragic death in an accident, the discovery that Rachel was pregnant with Noah, the financial struggles, it was all there. The final entries were the hardest to read. Rachel was already ill, aware her time was short. I have to tell him the truth, not for me, but for Emma. She deserves to know her father, and Jack. Jack deserves to know he has a daughter. But how do I do it now? How do I explain a lie that lasted 6 years? The last entry felt like a punch to the gut. Maybe fate has its own plans. I saw Jack again today from a distance. He looked different, still powerful and successful, but the loneliness in his eyes, still there, the same I saw that night so long ago. If something happens to me, I hope the universe conspires to bring father and daughter together. Emma deserves to know the incredible man her father is, and Jack deserves the unconditional love only a child can give. Forgive me, Jack, for not being braver. Forgive me, Emma, for keeping this secret. When the truth finally comes to light, I hope you'll understand I did what I thought was best. With eternal love, Rachel. Jack closed the diary, hands shaking. Helen, silent all this time, finally spoke. She really loved you, you know, in her own way. I know, Jack replied quietly, and somehow, I think I loved her too. Not as a grand romantic love, but as someone who gave me the greatest gift of my life. He picked up the photos in the envelope, images of Emma as a baby, her first steps, first words, every precious moment he'd missed, preserved by a mother who, despite her fears and insecurities, had never stopped thinking of her children's well-being. What will you tell the kids? Helen asked. The truth, Jack replied without hesitation, that their mother was an extraordinary woman who did the best she could under impossible circumstances, and that, thanks to her, even without knowing, I've never really been alone all these years. That afternoon, when the children returned from school, Jack gathered them in the living room. With Emma in his lap, Olivia and Noah snuggled at his sides, he told them the whole story. Not the simplified version they'd known, but the complete truth about Rachel, tough decisions, and unconditional love. So, Mom wanted to tell you all along, Emma asked, eyes glistening with tears. Yes, sweetheart, she wanted us to know each other. She just never found the right time. But now we're together, Olivia said in her innocent way. That's what matters, right? Exactly, princess, Jack smiled, pulling her closer. Sometimes life takes strange turns to get us exactly where we need to be. Noah, too little to fully grasp it, seemed to sense the importance of the moment. He climbed into Jack's lap with Emma clinging to him. Dad, Emma said after a moment, did Mom know you would take care of us? Jack thought of the diary's last entry, of Rachel's final wish. I think she did, honey. In some way, she always knew. They stayed like that for a long time, all 4 of them hugging, each processing the truths revealed in their own way. No more secrets, no more doubts, only love. The love of a mother who did what she could to protect her children, and the love of a father who, without knowing it, had waited a lifetime for this. You know, Jack said softly, your mom left a letter for you, Emma, for when you turn 18. The girl's eyes widened. Really? Yes. And until then, we have this album of photos so we can see all your milestones as a baby. They spent the rest of the day looking through the pictures, laughing at Emma's baby faces, admiring Rachel's pregnant belly, and getting to know Carlos through the images. It was a love story in all its forms, imperfect, complicated, but profoundly real. Surrounded by his 3 miracles, Jack finally understood. There was nothing to forgive. Rachel had made her choices out of love, just as he was making his now. The past couldn't be changed, but the future, that was wide open. "I love you, Dad," Emma whispered, hugging him tight. "I love you too, Dad," Olivia echoed. "Love you, Papa," Noah chimed in, not wanting to be left out. Jack held his 3 children close, his heart brimming with love and gratitude. "I love you too, my little ones, forever." And somewhere, he was sure, Rachel was smiling. The judge's courtroom was packed that sunny September morning. Jack straightened his tie for the 10th time as Emma adjusted the bow on Olivia's dress and made sure Noah was presentable in his tiny suit. "All rise," announced the court officer. Judge Robert Hayes entered with a smile that suggested this wasn't a typical hearing. Indeed, in his 30 years on the bench, few cases had touched him as deeply as the Thompson family's. "We're here today," he began, "to formalize what fate and love decided long ago." Jack held Emma's hand in his right and Olivia's in his left, while Noah balanced on his hip. The moment they had waited for so long had finally arrived. "Jack Thompson," the judge continued, "you're already the biological father of Emma. Today, you are here to legally adopt Olivia and Noah Thompson. Are you certain of this decision?" "More certain than anything in my life, Your Honor," Jack replied, voice thick with emotion. The judge smiled. "Olivia, do you want Jack Thompson to be officially your dad?" "Yes," the little girl answered without hesitation. "He's already my dad in my heart." The room filled with emotional laughter. Helen, Jack in the front row, discreetly wiped away a tear. "And how about you, Noah?" the judge asked, even though the toddler was too young to truly understand. "Papa," Noah answered, clinging tighter to Jack's neck, eliciting more smiles from those present. "Very well," the judge declared. "Considering all the reports, evaluations, and most importantly, the evident love in this family, it is with great joy that I sign the official adoption. As of this moment, Olivia and Noah are legally Jack Thompson's children." The courtroom erupted in applause. Emma was the first to hug her father, followed by Olivia. Noah, still in Jack's arms, joined the group hug with his tiny arms. "Now nobody can ever separate us," Olivia proclaimed, making everyone laugh through their tears. The celebration at the Thompson mansion was intimate but meaningful. The garden, decked out in balloons and ribbons, was filled with the people who had been part of this extraordinary journey. Richard, the lawyer, raised his glass in a toast to the Thompson family, who taught us that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as storms. Helen had organized everything to perfection, from the children's buffet to the decor, which blended elegance with playful details. In the center, a 3-tiered cake decorated with a "Our Family" theme, Emma's idea. "Dad," Emma said at one point, pulling Jack aside to a quieter corner of the garden, "I have something to show you." She took a folded piece of paper from her dress pocket. It was a drawing. On it were 6 figures holding hands: Jack, Emma, Olivia, Noah, and 2 angels in the sky, Rachel and Jack's mother, Sarah. "It's our whole family," she explained. "The one here with us and the ones watching over us from above." Jack felt tears prick his eyes as he hugged his daughter. "It's perfect, my love. Absolutely perfect." Later, when the party began to wind down, Jack gathered the kids for a special announcement. "How about a trip to celebrate?" The children's eyes lit up with excitement. "Where to, Dad?" Olivia asked eagerly. "I was thinking we could go on a special journey," Jack explained. "We'll visit all the important places in our story. The apartment where Emma was born, the park your mum used to take you to play, the hospital where I volunteered after losing my mom." "Like a trip back in time?" Emma asked, her eyes shining. "Exactly," Jack smiled. "So we can understand where we come from and celebrate where we're going." "Can we bring flowers for Mom?" Olivia asked softly. "Of course, Princess, and for Grandma Sarah, too." The trip was planned for the following week. For the first time in years, Jack took a real vacation. No business calls, no urgent emails. This time was for his family. They visited first the small apartment where Rachel had raised the kids. The current tenant, moved by their story, allowed them inside. Emma remembered every detail, guiding Olivia through the rooms and sharing precious memories. "Mom used to put flowers in this window," she showed them, pointing to the kitchen window. "And here she measured our heights on the wall." The marks were still visible, faint lines with dates and names, documenting Emma's and Olivia's growth. Noah had been too young to have a mark, but Jack silently vowed to make one of their own at home. The park where Rachel had taken the children was unchanged, with the same swings and slides. Jack watched with emotion as Emma showed Olivia her favorite spots, Noah toddling behind his sisters with unsteady legs. At the cemetery, they laid flowers on Rachel's and Sarah's graves. Jack watched as his 3 children introduced themselves to Grandma Sarah, placing daisies, Rachel's favorite, beside her headstone. "They're together now," Emma commented, holding her father's hand, watching over us from up there. Their last stop was the hospital where it all began, where Jack had lost his mother, and years later, where Rachel had passed, leaving behind 3 small angels who would change his life forever. "You know," Jack said as they walked the corridors, "it was here that I promised my mom I would one day make a difference in someone's life. I never knew it would be yours." The trip ended where everything started, the highway where Jack had found the children on that stormy night. In the daylight, the place looked different, but the tree remained, a silent witness to the moment that changed their lives. "It feels like it was so long ago," Emma observed, looking at the tree. "And at the same time, it feels like yesterday," Jack added. Back at the mansion, now truly a home, Jack watched his children sleep. Emma in her blue room filled with books, Olivia surrounded by her ballerina teddy bears, Noah in his crib beneath a starry sky mural. In his study, he gazed at the photos on his desk, him with the children on adoption day, Emma's drawing of the whole family, old pictures of Rachel with the kids, and a photo of himself with his mother. Past and present, sorrow and joy, losses and gains, all woven together into a story of redemption and love. Helen found him there, lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "How surprising life can be," Jack replied. "How sometimes we need to lose ourselves completely to find our way." "And did you find your way?" Jack smiled, listening to the soft breathing of his sleeping children in the background. "I found much more than that, Helen. I found the meaning of everything." That night, before going to bed, Jack wrote one last entry in the journal he'd started when the kids arrived. "Dear Emma, Olivia, and Noah, today is officially the first day of the rest of our lives together. I don't know what the future holds manly, but I know we'll face it as one, the family that we are. Emma, my first surprise, my mirror, my little warrior, you taught me that love knows neither time nor distance. Olivia, my ray of sunshine, my little dreamer, you showed me that family is much more than blood. Noah, my little miracle, my last gift from Rachel, you showed me it's never too late to start over. And Rachel, wherever you are, thank you. For our children, for your courage, for loving so deeply that even after you left, your love continues to guide us. The storm that brought us together has passed. Now is a time of sunshine, laughter, and love. A time to build memories, to dream together, to be the family we all wished for. With eternal love, Dad." He closed the journal and looked out the window. The sky was clear, speckled with stars. Somewhere up there, 2 extraordinary women, Rachel and Sarah, were surely smiling upon the family they had helped create. The storm was over, leaving behind not only tears, but rainbows, new beginnings, and the purest form of love. The love of a family that chose one another, found one another, completed one another. And this was only the beginning.